We're here today to discuss the installation instructions for the Polaris RZR 900 XP max clearance arms designed here in Highlander. Before you get started, make sure you read the warning label at the beginning of the instructions so you know all the pitfalls of putting this kit on. All kits come equipped with 2 trailing arms to the left and right, some sway bar attachment brackets, heim joints, the inserts for the heim joints, several bolts, 12 by 120 millimeter, 10 by 55 millimeters, 10 by 50 millimeters, and 10 by 40 millimeters. You also come with a P-clamp that's used to reroute the brake line, jam nuts, 12 millimeter lock nuts, 10 millimeter lock nuts, 6 by 8 millimeter bolts, 6 millimeter washers, and 10 millimeter washers. So today we're going to be installing the new Highlander Pro Series max clearance trailing arms for Polaris RZR XP. What we're going to do is going to get more ground clearance and a better approach angle so you won't drag on rocks and deep ruts. So let's get this started and roll this in the shop. Ready for the install. So we're going to start the installation today by jacking up the rear of the RZR and taking off the rear tires. And once you've taken off the rear tires, you want to secure the RZR with jack stands. The next step on the installation is to remove the sway bar linkage. You disconnect the top and the bottom from the arm. Once you've removed the linkage from one side, go ahead and do it on the other side to make the installation go a whole lot easier. If your RZR is equipped with rod guards, you want to remove them at this time. This RZR is not equipped with them, so we're going to move on down to the rear knuckle and hub assembly and radius bars. We're going to disconnect those from the arm. You're going to remove the radius rods, the knuckle and hub assembly from the swing arm. First, you want to also disconnect the brake line from the clips. At this point, you want to make sure that the brake line is fully disconnected from the arm. There are 4 bolts that are connected hub assembly to the trailing arm. You want to make sure you remove those bolts. Then you will follow that up by removing the radius rods from the knuckle assembly. Next, you want to disconnect the lower portion of the shock from the trailing arm. Once you have disconnected the shock and the hub assembly from the trailing arm, you want to disconnect it from the frame at this point here. Now that you've got your stock trailing arm removed from your ATV, let's show you the difference between the two. On the stock trailing arm, below the shock mount, you have all this material that catches on rocks and ruts when you're riding in the riding situation. With the Highlander arm, you've eliminated this drag beneath the shock mount, so you get more ground clearance and more clearance in the front of the tire. The next step in the installation is going to be to set the heim joint on the new trailing arm provided by Highlander. But you do that by taking a stock measurement. And you measure an eyelet on the end of the arm, the eyelet on the bolt hole, center to center, and that should be 34 and 3/16 of an inch. You want to recreate that same distance with the heim joint on the new rod. So let's start that installation. When installing the heim joint, you want to make sure you take the jam nut and run it all the way down on the end of the heim. And once you've done that, you want to thread it into the trailing arm. Okay, so now we're going to check our measurement after we've got our heim in place. 34 and 3/16 is the factory setting, but what you want to make sure new is if you're running an aftermarket trailing radius rod or an aftermarket lift kit, you may have to adjust these settings to catch your clearances, because what could happen is your radius rod could hit on your frame, or you could have a clearance issue with the lift kit. So make sure after you install this to check all your clearances to make sure you've got no rubbing on the frame. You want to do it in full extension and full compression. Next, you want to install the 2 high alignment bushing. Now you're ready to connect the arm to the frame. When you're connecting the trailing arm to the frame, you want to make sure you use the factory bolt and the factory nut. Okay, the next step in the installation is to attach the lower portion of the shock to the trailing arm. But you have two options here. One is to keep the factory plastic cover, and when you do that, you want to rotate the cover around. Then you're going to take the cover off and trim a little bit of plastic back here and then reattach the plastic cover. Or you can remove the cover altogether. So today we choose to take our plastic cover off, we're going to trim it, and we're going to reattach it to the shock. You want to remove these little ears off the shock cover using a Dremel tool or whatever you have handy. Once you remove the ears, you have a clean, smooth area. Now you reattach it to the shock assembly. Now that we've trimmed and rotated the shock cover assembly, before we attach the shock to the trailing arm, we want to go ahead and connect the hub assembly back to the trailing arm using the factory nuts and bolts. Now that we have the trailing arm connected to the knuckle and hub assembly, it's time to attach the shock. Alright, you want to connect the shock assembly to the trailing arm by using the 12 by 120 millimeter hex head bolt and the 12 millimeter lock nut provided in the kit. Now we're going to attach the sway bar link back to the new trailing arm. You want to use a 10 by 50 hex bolt provided in the kit, and the stock spacer, slide it on the other side, and you want to attach it to the attachment point on the trailing arm. Loosely fasten it with a 10 millimeter lock nut. Next, you want to attach the new sway bar link bracket to the inside of the sway bar. Then you want to connect the two together, placing a 10 millimeter washer between the sway bar link and the bracket using a 10 by 55 hex bolt. And then fasten with a 10 millimeter lock nut. One of the final steps in the installation is to attach the new teeth clamps to the brake lines to secure them out of the way. There's also some zip ties that you'll need to run the line along here next to the teeth clamp, just so you don't get the axle bar. But make sure you do use your zip ties that are provided in your teeth clamps to secure the brake line. And make sure you clearance the sway bar and any moving parts that can get in the way. You want to make sure you secure your brake line so that it stays out of the way of the axle and any moving components. And then you clip off the excess. And once you do this, you want to make sure you torque all your bolts back to factory specifications before you proceed to the next side. As you can see, we've completed the installation of our max clearance trailing arm, getting an additional 4.5 inches of ground clearance. Also, we've greatly increased the approach angle in front of our rear tires. Don't forget that it also has an arch design and works great with any bolt-on lift kit that actually attaches to the top of the shop. They come in red and white, and it's a great product. Thanks for buying Highland Products.